What is going on, guys? Jack here, stage name Ninjack, and in this video I'm going to break down the 4 types of weather, how they interact with each other, why I think the 2 that are winning right now are winning, and why I think the OU tier changes are strongly tied to the weather war going on at the moment. Then, later in the video, I'm going to explain why Galarian Wheezing might actually be an answer and become more viable in the coming months. So stick around because this is going to be a really interesting and cool video. So who rose to OU? Looking at the weather, we have rain and we have hail. Barraskewda and Pelipper have both risen to OU, and Alolan Ninetales has too. And that's because those weathers are dominating right now and are actually very common. It seems like I can't go 4 games without running into one of these 2 types of weather. Rain is especially frequent and common and has been for a while, but hail has grown in usage a lot in the last couple of weeks and last month. These Pokemon also rose to OU, and I believe that they are in large part a response to what is happening here, but we're going to explain that more later in the video. But first, guys, let's break down the weather wars by talking about the value that exists in each of the setters for the 4 types of weather. So starting off with Sun. Basically, the only viable setter is Torkoal. You can use Ninetales, but it's just not as good. And the primary reason for that is the Stealth Rocks plus Rapid Spin support that Torkoal brings. So Torkoal is able to set Stealth Rocks itself and use Rapid Spin to prevent Stealth Rocks and other hazards from being set up on its side. It's also a fairly bulky Pokemon naturally, and so it can live several hits, which makes it valuable. And then, of course, Drought, that Sunny Day effect, is going to have a 1.5x multiplier to Fire-type moves, so Torkoal can drop very heavy-hitting Lava Plumes. And then, naturally, the 1/2 damage from Water, which is useful for Fire types. Looking at Sand, you've got Tyranitar and Hippowdon. Let's take a look at what these do. So, Tyranitar does get a 1.5x Spadef boost whenever Sandstorm is active, thanks to the fact that it's a rock type. Currently, rock types are not super popular / common in the OU tier. Tyranitar is actually one of the only ones you really see, so this effect only really triggers on himself a lot of the times. Tyranitar is able to set Stealth Rocks and Hippowdon, but neither of these Pokemon are able to remove hazards like Torkoal can. And then Sandstorm does provide chip to the opposing team and also sometimes your team. This is generally a less impactful effect, but it can show up in some cases as useful. For example, dealing with Focus Sash. Now let's talk about Alolan Ninetales and Hail. So one of the biggest things that Alolan Ninetales is doing is setting Aurora Veil. This provides a massive boost to defenses for several turns for the rest of the team. See, Tyranitar gets this Spadef boost only for himself and other rock types. Alolan Ninetales sets Aurora Veil and sets it up for any of the other Pokemon on your team, which is why I think it's really powerful and popular right now. Also, it provides 100% Blizzard. Blizzard is a powerful hitting Ice-type move, and in a meta filled with Ground types and Dragon types, that is really strong. 100% Blizzard is a ton of value. And, like Sand, it does also provide some chip, and there can be uses for that. And finally, this will not be a surprise to many of you, I think. There are like a ton of reasons Rain is really useful, and why Pelipper is really good with setting Rain. So Rain does boost Water-type attacks power, so they're going to get that Stab plus Weather bonus to do a ton of damage. It does reduce the damage of Fire types in half. This is really useful when you have a Ferrothorn on your team, which, spoiler, almost every Rain team has a Ferrothorn. And I was talking about that 100% Blizzard on Ninetales, or on in Hail. You get 100% Thunder plus Hurricane, both of which Pelipper is able to learn, and also Zapdos, which is a really common Pokemon on Rain teams. Also, Pelipper is able to provide defog support, so Pelipper can remove those hazards, and it provides a slow U-turn, which is really valuable to come in, set Rain, swap out slowly so that you can get positioned with the correct Pokemon. We're going to talk about what those correct Pokemon are now. So let's break down what Pokemon are using the different types of weather and how they're taking advantage of it. Starting off with Fire type. Fire type, I definitely meant Sun. which actually, ironically, does not use a ton of fire types. It actually uses chlorophyll users like Venusaur. So what these Pokemon gain from it, for example, Venusaur is 2x speed. Shiftry is another example of a Pokemon that can get double speed from the sun. There is also 1.5x to damage to fire type attacks, so Charizard is able to use that, Heatran, Torkoal, as I mentioned. And Charizard is also able to have solar power, which allows it to hit really heavy on the special attack side by boosting the special attack of Charizard up to 1.5x what it was. Now, it does have a cost. It takes 1/8 of its HP every single turn when it's in the sun, so it's expensive, but it lets it hit really, really hard between stab, fire, weather, fire, and 1.5x special attack. So now, guys, let's talk about what these sand teams get out of sand. Basically, they get double speed. So moving on to hail, because that's really all there is to say about these sand teams, let's talk about what Arctozolt is getting. Arctozolt is also getting double speed, but thanks to Ninetales, it is almost always getting the Aurora Veil too. So it's getting essentially a boost to its defense and special defense. Whereas the sand type only gives a 1.5x boost to rock types, Arctozolt comes in and starts taking half damage on both fronts defensively. And it gets that 100% blizzard chance, which is actually really valuable, because this is a meta full of, again, dragon types and ground types. So let's compare Arctozolt and Dracozolt, actually, because I think this is a really useful way to understand why I think this Pokemon is being used more than this one. First of all, they both have access to Bolt Beak, and when they're in their respective weathers, they are normally the fastest Pokemon. And when Bolt Beak goes first, it is base 255 power. To put that in perspective, that is just a little bit more damage than an Iron Head from a Swords Dance Excadrill. Let me say that again. Bolt Beak, without any setup, just because it goes first, has just over the base power of an Iron Head from a already Swords Danced Excadrill. So Iron Head is a base 80 power move. With stab, it's 120. And if you double the attack because of Swords Dance, that is 240 base power, as compared to 255. So if you didn't know why Bolt Beak was insane, now you understand. It's like having a Swords Dance boost on an 80 base power move. And if you didn't know that and you thought that was really interesting and useful to know, go ahead and leave a like, guys, because 255 base power moves with no setup, how can you not leave a like for that? That stuff is insane. So now, guys, both of these Pokemon are almost always mixed attackers. So let's look at their special type attacks that are really strong. Fire Blast versus Blizzard. First of all, Blizzard cannot miss in hail. Fire Blast can miss in sand. And on top of that, Blizzard is actually stab. So it's going to be a stronger base power attack. And what's more, think about the things that want to come in on this Bolt Beak. Landorus, Garchomp, Volt Absorb Pokemon. Fire Blast is going to do a lot less to those than Blizzard, because obviously Blizzard is going to be super effective against those ground types, whereas Fire Blast is going to be neutral and it can miss. Both of them have a 10% chance to activate their secondary effects, but a burn is a lot less devastating than a freeze in most cases. So comparing the last slot there, Draco versus Low Kick. Dracozolt frequently has to use Draco to deal with the things that want to swap in on Bolt Beak, things like Garchomp or Landorus. However, Draco reduces your special attack by 2 stages, which cuts it in half, instantly making it so that it is way less powerful hitting on the special side, unless it swaps back out. Meanwhile, Low Kick is the coverage move of choice for Arctozolt to deal with the dark types and steel types that can be kind of a pain for it, things like Ferrothorn or Weavile, which does not lower any of the stats of Arctozolt. So Arctozolt has a lot more staying power because it has Aurora Veil, and none of the moves that it clicks reduce its stats, and Blizzard is actually a harder hitting move and better for hitting those ground types that want to come in to be immune to Bolt Beak. Now, let's move on to Rain. I laugh because Rain has like so many different users of the Rain. It's like almost hard to choose which one. So I chose the ones that I think are the most common. Barraskewda, Kingdra, Zapdos, and Seismitoad. 3 of the Pokemon down there, not Zapdos, get double the speed from Rain and get that 1.5x water stab boost. So Kind of comparing that to Sun over here, similar deal with Rain. However, Rain provides 100% accurate Hurricane and Thunder, which is enormous on Zapdos. Zapdos has both of those moves as stab moves and can hit like an absolute truck with those moves, not needing any setup. There are also a lot more users of Rain as compared to these other weathers. So that is another reason that Rain, I think, is really popular in the Weather War right now, because there's so many different Pokemon that can take advantage of it. You can build a team that has 3 to 4 Pokemon using that Rain, as compared to Sand, which really is only going to have 2 Pokemon that use the Rain, and your remaining 3 are going to be to try to provide coverage for what you're weak against. Speaking about what we're weak against, Corviknight is all over the meta right now, and Excadrill really has no way of dealing with that Corviknight. And the best way of dealing with a Corviknight frequently is thought of as Magnezone, because you can trap it and one-shot it with an electric move. But if you have an Excadrill, a Magnezone, and a Tyranitar or Hippowdon, setup Garchomp becomes an absolute nightmare for you. And that Pokemon's pretty common right now. I wanted to give you guys a comparison to understand Barraskewda. So Barraskewda is going to frequently, almost always, have Choice Band, and it's got the 2x speed from water. Imagine a Garchomp that comes in at double speed. So imagine Garchomp comes in as if it's clicked Scale Shot twice, but it doesn't have defense drops. And imagine it came in, clicked Swords Dance, but Landorus came in, so it's at 1.5. Think of that is the equivalent of Barraskewda. Barraskewda is, and let alone the fact that you have a stab from water. So if you have Rain going on and you have stab, it may as well be a Swords Dance double Scale Shot Garchomp that comes in without any setup. So if that doesn't help put it in perspective how insanely powerful Barraskewda is, I really don't know what will. This is just another reason that Rain is so common right now, and why I think Barraskewda very quickly made its way into the OU tier. So, I mentioned some other Pokemon that had risen to OU, Victini, Blacephalon, and Buzzwole. I think this is in response to weather in a large way. Let's talk about Victini first. Victini against Rain. Please show me your your Bolt Strike switch in. This thing dies. Zapdos really doesn't want to eat that. Kingdra doesn't want to eat that. You want Ferrothorn? Okay, well, I also have V-Create, by the way. This is really your only answer to Victini on this team, and not all the Rain teams have this. And frequently, if you have this, you don't have Kingdra. So Victini has just got really good coverage for Rain. Now looking at Hail, V-Create, Bolt Strike, V-Create. Again, Victini just hits everything on this team very powerfully. Blacephalon is kind of the same deal. Literally, just show me your Shadow Ball swap in here. Okay, I rest my case. Moving down to here, show me your Shadow Ball swap in. Literally none. So Shadow Ball is actually a move that very few teams have good swap-ins for. There are not many Pokemon being run that are Dark type right now to resist those Shadow Balls. This thing hits harder than a Dragapult, to put that into perspective. And what's more, it gets the Beast Boost, and so it can very quickly ramp up. So if you're a Choice Scarf and you get 1 kill, now you're hitting harder than Dragapult, and you're faster than Dragapult. And if you come in Choice Specs, you're hitting harder than Dragapult right out the gate. So that's the reason I think this is really popular. Also, I didn't even mention the fact that it's also Fire-type, guys, so dead. So Blacephalon is really good against both Rain and Hail. Looking at Buzzwole, I think it is a really strong physical wall, which is very, very valuable for dealing with Barraskewda, Ferrothorn, and Arctozolt. So you might be thinking, but Arctozolt can click Blizzard and hit you pretty hard. Yes, that's true, but you can click Drain Punch and hit it very hard. You can easily beat an Arctozolt with a close combat. I think Drain Punch is probably better against Hail just because it normally runs sub this Arctozolt, so you're going to want to Drain Punch to get a little bit of recovery back to make sure that you're okay for the next hit. So let's talk about the Pokemon that dropped from OU. They have responded to the shift in weather by dropping. Now I should point out there are a lot of factors involved in the meta, of course, and so I'm not saying that everything here dropped because of these two weather, but I do think they're correlated. And rather than go through each of these one by one, I'm just going to point out that if you look at them compared to each of these teams, none of these Pokemon really do well. This thing can't do much with Freeze Dry, and then of course Thunder. Mandibuzz, again, going to lose to that Bolt Strike, and it doesn't want to eat these liquidations. So everything here just doesn't really do very well against these two types of weather that are so common right now. And Excadrill, as I pointed out, just gets so much less out of his weather as compared to the Pokemon that are abusing their weather in these two teams. And as a result, I think Excadrill is just unable to keep up. Also, Corviknight's like all over the place, and Excadrill just does not know how to deal with Corviknight. So as I was thinking about these weather wars and what we can do about them without just making this entire meta weather by all of us running weather teams, I was looking through the list of viable Pokemon, and I came across Galarian Weezing. Now, I mentioned this in the beginning of the video. Here it is. And it gets the ability Neutralizing Gas, which will prevent the weather setters from setting their weather while this Pokemon is in. I think this has some potential to actually be really useful in the current meta. So I think it would run a physically defensive set with Protect, Pain Split, and then some combination of the moves Will-O-Wisp, Toxic T-Spike, and then Sludge Bomb Flamethrower. So you guys, let's start out by looking at how this Galarian Weezing would do against rain. First of all, if you lead out and you neutralize the weather from Pelipper, Pelipper's really not doing anything anymore and probably going to click slow U-turn. Or maybe it could try to Specs attack you with like Scald, but that's not going to be all that strong, whereas your Sludge Bomb's going to hit pretty stinking hard. And you can always Protect to Scout, and I actually think that's really valuable in this particular case because you can see if it's the slow U-turn set or if it's a Spec set. And if it is Specs, you probably want to swap because you're going to need this for Barraskewda. Also, almost nothing on this team wants to swap into Sludge Bomb except that Ferrothorn, which if you couple it with a Will-O-Wisp, is like a free burn. So looking at the Hail matchup, Sludge Bomb does a ton of damage to pretty much anything, and that poison is really valuable. And if Corviknight comes in, that's a free Will-O-Wisp, which is super valuable, and Corviknight's not really doing anything to your Galarian Weezing. And what's more, you have the move Protect, which is really good for the plethora of choice Pokemon in the current meta. And I forgot to mention that this thing would run Black Sludge. So by having Protect, you can scout what that Barraskewda wants to do. If you run it with Toxic, you can also allow that Toxic to start doing more damage. And you can see what the Choice Specs Volcanion wants to lock into, so you know which Pokemon to swap into. So it can take the guessing game just out of the equation. And T-Spike can be super crippling on teams like Rain and Hail, because if that's not Boots Arctozolt, which I have seen many leftovers, that poison is absolutely crippling. Same with that Volcanion. It comes in on the T-Spike, gets poisoned, you Protect to find out what he wants to lock into, and now he's already taken 24% damage. And you can then swap into whatever you feel like, and if they try to stay in and click that move again, that's 36% damage and only allowing it to click one move before you probably force it out. So this Galarian Weezing is actually a really valuable Pokemon for the current meta. Now, if you guys have not seen my most recent video, how I hit top 500 and how you can too, you definitely should go check it out. It's linked here. And I show you guys a super fun team, and I break down the game analysis so that you guys can see exactly how I hit top 500 so that you can go implement it too. That's all for me, guys, today. My name is Jack, stage name Ninjak, and I'll see y'all out there.